Okay, still in the leg series here. This exercise is called the simple shin raise. For this, you're going to be leaning against a wall or a door, and you stand with your back against the wall and your feet hip width apart. And to start with, you probably want it something like a foot, your heels about a foot away from what you're leaning on. Feet parallel, hands can rest anywhere you like on the front of the thighs, and your spine should be in a neutral position. The exercise utilizes the muscles down the front of the shin, the anterior compartment of the leg, and keeping your back neutral and hinged forwards, you're going to pivot onto your heels by pulling the dorsum, the top of your feet, up from the floor. You then control the descent back down. So your simple shin raise, you come up, and what you should feel is like you slightly slide up what you're leaning against, and then lower down. Now, the closer your feet are towards what you're leaning on, the easier the exercise. So the further your feet are, the more difficult the exercise becomes. The lift is fairly straightforward. It's the descent which you're trying to control here. Now, this is really going to be important for controlling how your foot strikes the floor. So people who've come up with this exercise speak in a lot of depth about why this is important. If your feet habitually just have very little control and slap back down onto the deck, then when that happens, you are putting a lot of strain on the knee. By being able to train up muscles on the front of the leg, which is on the front of the shin, and getting control in that placement, you are stopping the natural collapse that happens with foot strike. So this exercise is great. One, because it works on that aspect, but two, this is a group which is often quite ignored, isn't it? I mean, there are contraptions you can put on where you can do heel or foot raises rather to work on this anterior leg compartment, but a lot of people won't have access to that sort of stuff, and it's quite difficult to do these exercises without that equipment, unless you're doing the simple shin raise. So with this one, you're going to feel how the anterior compartment probably gets worked quite quickly. Make sure that you're not rounding your back as you do this. You want a neutral spine, and if you're bent forwards too much, it might mean that you get a little bit of neural tension developing through the posterior nerve chain, which is something to be avoided. So you're quite upright and carrying yourself well. You also, as a final point, want to make sure that as you're coming up with the feet, that you're not getting any turning out or in. You're getting that quite pure movement. So when you're doing your raises and looking down, you should be able to get that nice symmetry in the feet all the way through. And it's the control down and the lowering which is the important aspect of this exercise. This one, you could use it as a warm-up before runs. It's nice to fire up that anterior chain in the shin. But don't be surprised if you're trying this one and you fatigue quite quickly, particularly if you haven't done the exercise for these muscle groupings before. So that's why maybe I'm just slightly guarded about recommending it as a warm-up pre-run, because if you're not used to it, you could feel like you've already done a really long run after just 15-20 reps or something. So maybe more geared towards your home exercise program, but if you're confident with that kind of exercise, or you're used to exercising those shin muscles regularly, then for sure you can use it as part of a warm-up routine as well. That's the simple shin raise.